Is that good? Yep. Yep, there we go. Are we good? Do we have sounds? All right, so I'm gonna have to do the same thing on the next one, guys. So hold on while I change this. Yay for OBS. Constantly forgetting my mic. Thanks, OBS. I think we're good. There we go. So yeah, we're going to have to wait then when I transfer over. Let's just go to Wyvern. I'm going to be without sound again for just a second while I re-add this, guys. Hold on. There we go. Yeah, this is ridiculous, actually. And let me just make a sticky note really quick to change it on my other scenes so that I don't shoot a video and then have to reshoot the whole thing. Add audio, video scenes. Yeah, I don't know why, but probably because OBS is just kind of free and not awesome. But it likes to forget my mic. Video scenes. There we go. And I'll pop that right up on top of my everything so that I cannot forget it. There. Sticky notes for the win. How is everyone today? I'm all fixed. I'm already fixed, Shadow Raven. You've lost your chance. Yeah, this doesn't randomly pull audio from elsewhere. It just totally forgets my mic. Like, I have to, like, just totally add a new audio source, even though it's the same audio source, and rename it and add it. It's just so silly. Fine as a frog's hair. That's pretty fine, Sean. Yeah, it's weird. It's just, it's happened. I mean, I'm on my 5th mic re-add at this point. Like, I've had to do this 5 times in the course of this show. So, like, it happens every few months. It's weird. It's weird. Anyway, that's not... OBS and its weird problems are not what this show is about. So, yeah. I know it's not Wyvern Wednesday, right? Like, my alliterative skills are suffering today. I hate that, crows. I did exercises for that this morning, actually. I have a set. There are 3 different exercises that can help. Like, with different kinds. Like, because it's, like, not all neck pain is the same, right? Because everybody's neck pain is a little different. But there are also, like, 3 different kinds of, like, neck and shoulder pain that I've discovered. And there's a different exercise for each one, and I never know which one to use. It's weird. Oh, randomly picks another source for your mic. How nice, Muses. Set Monday to one day. One day. Yay, workout. Yuck, Kariniko. So like your hands are painting without you. They're like we're out here somewhere doing something. You don't know what because we're numb. Yes. It's crazy. All right, let me I've messed up my stuff. Hey guys, guess what? Today I'm alone. David officially went back to the office this morning. Officially, which meant that I was actually on time starting the show. I believe that this will be a trend. So if you're used to showing up 5 minutes late, Hold on. Wait. Oh, okay. That was just Justin telling me the show was good to go. That was a text I did not see before. Yeah, it's silly. All right, what are we going to do with Wyvern today? We're going to actually work on Wyvern's hind legs because everything else is looking up. And I want to get to the point where I can tackle all these different red scales. Now we've got his face looking really good. So Wyvern is getting... once we get to the point where we can tackle all these red scales, like Wyvern is going to be so close to done. So let us do that. Let us get out our Kraken ink for shading and our mahogany brown and orange brown. Mahogany brown and orange brown. And then our Osirian sand for that extra highlight on our orange. Hello, Propan. Propano-G. It is a good evening. Or actually, in my case, it's a good morning. It's a new week. I got a lot done over the weekend. I kind of had a working weekend. One of those weekends where I'm hanging out with David and we're watching Overwatch League, but I'm also working. Not ideal, but, I like getting things done. So for me, the workaholic kicks in. Sometimes you just got to ride that workaholic. Workaholic tendency can, it's a pain sometimes, but you do get things done. Yeah, I hope so, Kroniko. All right, so we're going to use some Kraken ink, some pure mahogany, because I want to make sure I've got a nice solid base on this. I may do a quick wet blend highlight on this sucker. Though, as I recall, and this is where I might kind of veer aside from the concept art, do we have a row of scales down the top of each of these legs? Let's look. No, the legs are very leathery, actually, on this model. So they're not actually... We're departing a little bit from the materials way of doing things. So normally, when you are looking at, like, a surface and you're painting it a specific... And a model has more than one kind of surface, like flesh and scales in this case. Normally, you want to paint all the flesh consistently and all the scales consistently. However, sometimes it's just going to look weird. The Wyvern would look really weird with creamy purple orangey legs. And I have actually already violated this a little bit with the skin on the underside of the hands and the wing struts. So I'm going to continue to violate it and just say, nope, we're just going to go with this. We're going to go with the red, even though this is skin and not scales. Sometimes you have to make decisions based on what would look best and make sense to you. And as long as it doesn't look wrong, you're fine. Cool, Twistoma. There is really not another paint that is like Kraken Ink War Shadow. The closest thing for you would be my favorite Monarch Purple, 9239. However, that's not quite blue enough. I might add in a drop of clear blue. Yeah, Kraken Ink is Kraken Ink. This is the thing. This is the thing with Master Series. Because we strive to make paints colors unique so you guys aren't paying twice for the same color, you're going to end up with paints that have a unique utility that you should just get. Yeah, it's not going to be the same War Shadow, but it'll be, it'll get you It's a purple that it doesn't have a lot of black in it. Actually, Monarch doesn't have any black in it, which is why it's so useful. And clear blue also. So it probably isn't going to quite have like Kraken Ink actually has a surprising amount of coverage. You're not going to get that, but if, you know, you'll get close to the color. Yeah, normally with animals, Lord Nobody, I do really prefer to be consistent, right? To have like certain types of scales will be the same color. Animals tend to have that in nature, so I tend to do that. But yeah, I mean, at the bottom end of the quarter, it's exactly what I always told the kids at Paint Club, which is if you think it looks awesome, then it does. And if that is your goal, then you're right. Kraken Ink is available in a set, I believe, Evil Twin. We started using it before I realized that they weren't going to release it as a single, or they just haven't done it yet. I would highly encourage Reaper to release it as a single, considering the amount of push I put into it. In a fast palette? Good. Well, that's not bad then. I mean, if you paint to please yourself, then that's really the only criteria, right? Is if it's cool for you. I paint to please myself, but I also want other people to, like, enjoy the work. So sometimes I do make decisions based on consistent art rules. Also, I'm not into chaos. Like, I do like an orderly mini. But then I like naturalism, so... High Seas Horror Fast Palette. Thank you, Quindy. I may need to... I keep, forgetting to go and just get one of those. Just to make sure I've got an extra bottle of this, because seriously, I use this color a lot now. Sometimes a new color comes out and it just becomes your go-to. Well, it depends, Crows. I mean, I would consider buying the Fast Palette if it had at least 2 other colors I thought that I liked and would use. If it's just one color, then you're just gonna have to mix. If you want to get a purple, that's quite this. You know, that works similarly. You always have that option. I mean, I just told you what colors to mix. So. But if you want it out of a bottle to act exactly the way that it does... Neon green. Oh, yeah. It's classic Tyranid, you know, ooze color, right? I do... Tyranid is one of my first 40k army, I think. Actually, technically Dark Eldar were, but they weren't really, because I only got, like, 400 points of them and gave up and started Tyranids, because they were cooler. Gonna get my water in here. Gonna thin all these 4-to-1 just to start, because I'm probably gonna be working with some thicker paint. Oh yeah, Sharkbite is totally worth it. So like if you don't have the colors in that fast palette, I really love both Sharkbite and Kraken Ink. But again, up to you. You can always mix. That is always an option. I keep encouraging people to mix, and just people don't like to. So that's the it's all in what works. But like I said, if you've got Monarch Purple and Clear Blue, you can get close. And I would probably do a 4-to-1 or 5-to-1. Yes, 5-year-olds are very good about mixing. And then we teach them, you know, that they should just go for the easy thing. Sadly. Some people retain their love of color mixing. And I think that that's a bonus in this hobby. Because you can discover some beautiful colors. I mean, look at all the beautiful colors that I've discovered just mixing Kraken Ink with other stuff. Mix these guys up. I also grabbed some walnut brown because I want to darken down the claws. Now that I've done the horns, I can do the claws the same way on the Wyvern. Again, consistent material, consistent technique. There's a very rattly cart outside my window, so apologies if you hear it rattle. There we go. I am using my fresh new Raphael. I may regret this because, you know, if they keep having a shortage, like, how am I ever going to get other ones? Oh, and my brushes should come today, guys. My big brushes. My super fast paint brushes. They should all come today. Yeah. Let's see. Do I have another? Yeah, I guess I have one more Raphael 8408 size 1 that is pristine in its wrapper. And a number of Da Vinci's. This was my thing is, I think I mentioned this before, but I have this tendency where I always was like, oh no, I'm going to be out of brushes. And so I bought more brushes, and then I would find brushes that I had already bought and squirreled away. So I'm going to put a solid coat here on this. You can see how my first coat of mahogany was a bit light. So I'm going to make sure I've got a nice solid coat on the nether limbs of the Wyvern, so that we have a good platform to work from. And I've put the Wyvern on a giant block, as you can see. It's not really a giant block, it's a medium-sized block that it fits quite well, so that I can reach everything. And you know what, we probably could back out just a little bit. There we go. That way you guys can see the whole Wyvern while I'm working. See the whole Wyvern, because I'm not doing anything like super intricate. So I'm gonna make all of this limb red, and I totally missed a spot underneath on my first go. You can see that I just blocked in the back limbs just like a little bit. Oh, and we probably don't need that in the camera. Now we'll be able to see Wyvern better. All right. Sweet. Yay for new dice. Do you get new dice whenever you start a new game or a new character, Shadow Raven? I always had that tendency. Alrighty, let's get the back side of this. I just want both limbs set up nicely before I start in, because once I've got my highlights all going, I'm going to move pretty fast. We're to the point now where almost everything we have left is like one color, red, right? And having saved that, that means we can now progress very quickly over a lot of different surfaces. Let's get our little Wyvern paws and Wyvern butt. And we'll fill in the tail at the same time too, just so we don't have to stop for it. Hey there, Roger. How's it going? Ah. Oh, okay. So you're just a compulsive dice buyer. Got it. That used to be pretty dangerous at the Reaper game store, because the dice were, you know, where the candy bars are in a traditional grocery store, which is totally fitting and suitable. But it did mean you looked at the pretty colors whenever you went to buy something and inevitably reached for pretty shiny, sparkly dice. Sometimes I was lucky and they hadn't restocked, and so all the colors left were like ugly, but more often it was not so easy to make your save versus shiny new dice. All right, so a nice big solid coat of this beautiful color. I hope you all are sold on mahogany brown, by the way. This beautiful reddish brown color I'm using. It's a little bit more red than brown. And if you were always looking for a replacement for the old Pro-Paint aged red brick, this is it. I loved aged red brick. One of my favorite Pro-Paint colors. Probably my absolute favorite Pro-Paint color. Old Pro-Paint. Old Pro-Paint. the original line that Reaper had when I first started at the company. But yeah, I loved this color immensely. It's the perfect for auburn hair. Like before we made the red hair triad. And even so, I still, if you wanted to go a darker, like more reddish color, I would still use mahogany brown instead of auburn shadow. Auburn shadow is just a little bit lighter. It's probably a little more realistic. But this is the color that I used for Sophie the Succubus's hair base coat since I started at Reaper. So if y'all remember that color and you liked it when it was out in Pro Paint, or you always liked the color of Sophie's hair when I was painting her, then there you go. After this, we're going to line around these scales with our Kraken ink and do some simple shading. I tend to like to go base coat first, then shade, then highlight. I sometimes will violate that. On really light colors, I tend to like to start with the shadow and work up. Most skin tones are like that for me. Even dark skin tones, weirdly, are like that for me. It's just a habit to do skin that way, I think, at this point. But otherwise, I tend to do it the other way. I tend to lay down a base coat, even when I'm doing fast and wet blend and all that kind of thing. I tend to do base first. All right, solid, 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 good. Good, good. And some of these spurs and horns on the tail will be, actually 1, 2, 3 of them will be done like the bone horns, and the claws will be done. So we'll probably have a claws and horns day. Hello, Orcrystal. Orcryst Studio, and I ought to know that by now. Names are very bad for me today. I screwed up Quindy's this morning, but hi. Welcome to Wyvern Monday, or what was it? Mivern Monday, or Wyvern One Day, something like that. Everybody wanted alliteration. But we are working on and getting close to the end of our Wyvern. For those of you who wonder what the Wyvern is, it's this, sculpted by Julie Guthrie, who is actually in the chat as green users. But yeah, so we just set up, I was just talking about, it's all good, yeah, blah. Yeah, I got my Bones 5 last week. It was very exciting, Orcryst. I didn't order a lot, but I'm excited to start on one of the models from Greek Odyssey later this week. So that was the expansion set that I went for, because I really liked almost all of it. Good, Thorn. Yeah, when you get a giant load of models like that, it is useful to just, settle down and start getting a couple done. That's why I'm excited to start on my... I ordered mostly big stuff because, mostly the Odyssey is monsters. But I needed some really cool monsters to paint on the show here, so the first one we're going to be doing is the Golem, the really cool Centurion-looking Golem guy. And we're going to be doing it in true metallics, so. And people, I believe, chose a green, orange, purple for that. So we're going to be doing some colored metallics. Different shading and highlighting techniques. Probably some weathering. Could be fun. Could be fun. But right now I just want to make sure that all the horns and everything that are going to be painted differently on the model are painted a different base to begin with. Oh, oils. Nice. Yeah, I've not given into the oils. I worked with oils as a 2D artist in art school and as a kid also. And I used to love them, but now I've gotten so good at acrylics, it's like going back to oils. And I won't go back to solvent-based oils, so I'd use my acrylic, my water-soluble oil paints from Winsor & Newton. But yeah, I'm not into solvents, but Wapple gets some beautiful effects with them, and I thumbs up to anybody who jumps into oils, because there's definitely a steep learning curve, but you can get some just beautiful colors and effects because of the natural translucency and saturation of oils. So... I mean, there's a reason the historical guys used them for skin, even after they switched the rest of their palettes to acrylics. Hello, Big Apple. Oh, dear me. Hold on. Wait. Don't want to put the wyvern tail on the new fresh gray paper. Happy subiversary, happy subiversary, happy subiversary, happy subiversary. To you, Big Apple. Thank you. 12 months. Yes, have some Wendy's or some whatever you want to order. We're having burgers tonight too, so I totally can't, like just that. Although we're grilling. We're grilling our own rather than going to Wendy's. But there we go. Yeah, cool. Yeah, Greek Odyssey. I am not disappointed at the Greek Odyssey set. I opened up those monsters and I was excited to paint almost all of them. So yeah, that'll be good. On the stream, we'll be tackling them. I'll be replacing my monsters with them. I have a lot of characters lined up to paint for the stream, but I was definitely lacking in monsters that I was excited about. So now I've got tons of monsters, and I'm super happy. Yeah, the Cyclops was one of the ones we voted, Thorn. We voted on which one to paint first out of 4. I think I said either the Centaur, the Hydra, the Cyclops, or the Golem. And the majority of people voted for the Golem here on stream. Usually I make my own decision about what I want to paint for the stream, but sometimes if there are like 4 things and I'm like excited about all of them, then absolutely people get to vote on what I paint next. All right, so I'm taking some Kraken ink. It's thinned 4:1, just like the mahogany was, but because it's a lot more transparent than the mahogany, that's not going to be as solid of a color. I'm going to be able to blend it a little bit. I want to put a shadow like right up against these red scales to make them stand out after I highlight them. I do tend to do as I mentioned when you guys came in on the raid, I do tend to do a base coat, then shade, then highlight methodology. I do violate that for some things like skin tones. For some reason, I just got in the habit of doing the shadows first on skin, mostly because I find that it gives me better results when I'm painting lighter skin tones, but it's just a habit, so now I do it even with dark skin tones. So I just want to get kind of a nice line of shadow there under the scales. TMM is just like NMM. Like, TMM done well is you're using the same thought processes as NMM. So if you learn NMM, you should find that your TMM improves as well. Otherwise, TMM done without like worrying about lighting is very simple. It is shading and highlighting like with everything else. It could just be challenging because of the nature of metallic flake. But I mean, the trick with metallics is you want to shade and highlight them, just like you shade and highlight everything else. And if you also do that with an eye toward, I'm gonna shade all the way down to Kraken ink on the underside of the tail here, guys, because it's totally in shadow, so it should be dark. But yeah, I mean, your metallics, if you also highlight and shade them with an eye toward like how light would actually fall, like we do on NMM, then they look even better. And that's really kind of the ways to tackle it. You can thin metallics, but I don't thin them very much. Not even for highlighting. But I do mix other lighter colors into them for highlighting. So we'll get to it. We'll do a lot of different stuff on the Golem, ideally. I have grand plans. Grand plans. Yes, Kent. It is in fact a yellow ochre. It's a slightly lighter. If you want a more saturated than the new oxide yellow that is coming out for Bones 5, is a more intense ochre. Palomino is a little bit more faded. It's got a little bit of white and stuff in it. It's made in a slightly different base, so it's gonna have figure out. I would try both and see which one you like the feel of more, because they are built slightly differently. But the oxide yellow is essentially a clear, meaning it's just a single pigment. So it's a true yellow oxide, which is what we call yellow ochre these days. All right, so I'm messing around. I'm like, well, The thing is, if I want a line, then I need this stronger. If I want to shade with it, I need a little weaker. I'm going to add 1 drop of water into my Kraken ink. Because I do want to both shade and line. And I don't mind if my lines aren't terribly heavy. I just want to separate out these scales on the tail. Scales on the tail. We can rhyme today, we just can't alliterate. And remember to move the model around so that when you are lining, you always have your hand in a very comfortable position for you. It will enable you to have better control, and it's also going to build your brush control, your natural brush control. It's going to train your hand to not shake and to be more solid. And this brush has a very thin tip, which is very good for lining. Yeah, no problem again. I really like Palomino, and you may find the coverage on Palomino is a little better because, again, the ochre or the oxide yellow is a bit of a clear bright. It's not gonna, the oxide isn't gonna be like really transparent though, because all of the earth pigments. That's why these the new clears are kind of funny. Because earth pigments cover so well, you can't really call them clears. They are not going to be as translucent as a normal clear, but they are mixing colors just like normal clears because, like I said, they're single pigments. Since people asked for all that back when Chimera started doing it, we already had our clears out at that point, but we hadn't done a set of earth clears. And that's what these are, the new Bones 5s. I'll talk about them more on my Patreon, where I am currently crafting a PDF to talk about them. My Patreon is patreon.com/paintingbig. It is my adored profession, job, the main source of income for me. And I just love doing it, so... Oh, I just realized that technically I should have a fade in here because I have purple going up to this point, and then I've got some overlaying scales. I think I'm going to actually take this Kraken ink, and I'm going to make, like, a kind of artificially make a little stripe of purple. Just so there's not a stark transition of the purple here just to red. I think I want the purple to fade out a little bit, so I think I'm going to actually make kind of purple chevrons on at least the first several and just shrink them. Even though there's no detail on the tail to do that, you're just freehanding it really. But I think I want it to have kind of that feel to it, so... Thorin, this is a document camera. They're really the state of the art right now if you want to do painting streams or video. It is a IPEVO. VZX, I believe, VZ-X, which is the potentially wireless one, although I always use it plugged in. Document cameras are made to focus on fine detail, obviously, because they're supposed to let you project text upon a big screen for teaching. This one is not cheap, but is extremely reliable, which is why I liked it. It's also got the capacity to output pretty high resolution. But as you can see, you can get, and I'm not even zoomed in. I mean, if I really want to, let me see, where's my focal point? There's my focal point. If I really want to, I can sit here and you can see all the flaws and all the brush strokes. Just since I was base coating, it didn't make sense to zoom far in. And you can also, I like it because it's also got a bunch of controls over here on its stand. It's an L shape with the camera on the end of the upper L. And I love it because it's like zoom in, zoom out, fixed focus, light, rotate, all that stuff is right here on this, has a panel of buttons right here on the stock. So I don't have to go into software to change a thing. I can do everything right here. So it's super seamless. Yeah, well, teachers use them. This is a teaching camera. Like, teachers used them before we miniature painters found them. And when I was reading the reviews on this and checking this out after Reaper found it's a document camera that it, was using, I went looking for what was kind of like state of the art. And I found this one and just a ton of teachers saying that, you know, it was really reliable. They could use it all day, every day, and they had no problems with it. So, yeah, anything like that, right? Lord, it would take a lot of effort at this point, a lot of time to sit down and just like apply. And I've threatened to do this for my Patreon since I made the paint line. But to sit down and essentially make a listing of every paint with like a transparency number. But it will take a long time. It will take a long time. I would have to swatch everything on the same surface and then make an objective assessment and figure out what my numbers, you know, ranges were. And yeah, it's a lot of work. I think I am pretty fair if I say that if Reaper is anything is right now, anything like it was when I worked for them on site, that there's no way Sadie has the time to do that. Like, you are always running at Reaper. You are always trying to meet, you know, oh my God, we have an order of 800 Learn to Paint kits for, you know, Australia, and we need to get on that, you know, or this retailer just ordered a huge order and we don't have half of it. And so things like that, quality of life things, are the things that it's really hard to find time for at Reaper. Much as we all really want to do it, it's always a challenge, just because you've always got something that is coming up that's urgent that everybody's depending on you for, right? So I mean, honestly, if you want to know what colors are used on a mini, the power palette will give you a start. But the best thing you can do is just maybe swatch your own colors and kind of learn how to look at color. It's really not important. I have learned through my time, because every once in a while I'll look at, you know, a paint job online and I'll be like, oh, especially for like things like NMM gold and bronze. Like, I'll be like, okay, you know, I really like how this person did this NMM bronze. I really want to do a bronze like this. But I don't care what colors they actually used. It's more important to get a feel for the colors you have so that you can then look at your colors and say, which brown they used here is closest to a brown I have. It's going to be a lot more useful for you than specific color recipes for every model in the Reaper gallery. Now, given, you know, Reaper sometimes in box sets, especially for like dragons and stuff, has given you colors. But I don't know about doing it for a lot of stuff. I think it's really useful as a painter and doesn't take too much work. Even if you just started with a basic set of browns, and honestly, getting like just the Reaper clears and swatching them and getting a feel for them, maybe doing mixes with each, gives you a kind of a start on getting a good gut idea of what colors look like what. Yeah, right. Sadie's got a choice. She can keep, like, you know, producing paint for everybody, or she can stop and try to do quality of life stuff, like I was talking about. And for Reaper, that doesn't make sense. It makes sense for me on my Patreon, if it means that people will join my Patreon and enjoy it and get a lot out of it. So that's why I have considered doing it as my Patreon thing. I have the background to be able to do it, to go through and just like assign a rating to various colors. Oh, the other thing I was going to do in addition to coverage was muted versus saturated, like on a saturation scale, so that you guys could see kind of like, you know, which blue-gray is kind of the same level of muted as this red-brown or this gray-green. Because usually you want to, if it's a muted color, if it's a seriously muted color, you don't want to use it with anything really bright. But there are shades of gray in there. It's not just, this is muted, this is bright. There are plenty of colors that are slightly muted, like runic glow or spectral glow. The glow colors are great examples, where they have been muted by the addition of white. But they're still really vibrant. Alright, I need some Osirian sand because I need to be able to highlight my purples up here and bring out this idea and see if it's working. I just brought in a couple of stripes of orange there on the tail just to kind of define there. But I need to make these, since I'm freehanding this purple stripe down the middle, to kind of give it a continuation from the back there where I have a separate row of scales. I need to figure out if it's working. So I'm going to build some highlights for my purple to see if I can create that illusion. Honestly, with Master Series, because the transparency and coverage is so pigment linked, you can usually just eyeball it. A lighter color is always, in general, going to have better coverage. Darker colors are going to tend toward more translucency. Because white is your tool for coverage. When you're working with pigments, the colors that give you, the pigments that give you coverage are white and the earth tones usually. Everything else has a variable natural coverage that tends to not be as heavy because all the bright colors tend to be really transparent just out the gate. And that's just true across all lines. That's why finding a really heavy coverage yellow or red is so challenging. No matter what paint line you're looking at, you're always going to have a certain degree of transparency. It goes with the pigment. It directly has to do with the pigment grind. And the pigment grind is something that's intrinsic to each pigment that cannot be changed yet. I always put a yet in there because paint chemistry, they're always trying. They're always trying to make higher coverage versions of colors and pigments. But sometimes when they do, it changes how the paint acts too. Coverage is always going to make it harder, for example, to do some things with the paint. So I was going to make it harder to do like smooth layering and blending and getting, using thinned applications. And so there's a plus and a minus to that sliding scale. Trying to mix up a triad of purple here with using Osirian sand into Kraken ink. Let me zoom back here and get that in frame. So I'm kind of mixing up a little triad here, and I don't have a lot of Kraken ink in this pale one yet. That's pretty good. And this one needs to be a little bit. And I'll just go back and forth mixing these until I feel like I have 3 separate colors that make good highlights and shadows for each other, which I think I do here. So this is Kraken ink plus Osirian sand. Because Osirian sand has a lot of white in it, it is going to get more coverage as it goes up, which means I'm going to have to add more water to it as it goes up if I don't want, if I want it to be a little blendable. That's the people have already done that, the blackest black. But I mean, there's a limit. And it's done with a matte finish so that no light reflects, you get no gloss. But that only makes it disappear on camera. In person, the great quandary is that in person, a dead matte black won't necessarily look as deep of a black as a shinier black. Finish really affects color, is what it comes down to. I just work with it, Big Apple. It's not better or worse. It's how you work with it. In oil painting and acrylic canvas painting, you mix white into a color if you want to give it more coverage. And then you just go over the top with that initial very transparent color and you end up getting the color you want. I mean, that's something that's how you paint when you paint with tube paint. Especially oils, which, are really transparent except for the white. So your white is your tool. Now, some of the, like I said, yellow ochre also has better coverage in general, but you can even add to that with white. So I mean, but it's not better. Like, it's not a better me is always relative. Better me is like what is better? Everybody's better is different. I don't consider it better. I just use the transparent colors and do 2 coats. All I need coverage for is the first base. I don't need coverage for anything after that. I'm using all thinned paint after that. So transparency doesn't matter. I'm always adding water to it to get it even more transparent. So it's like, if I want higher coverage on a color, I'll usually just, I'll just put 2 coats on. Hello, Daffodweir. Cadmium, yeah, right, Raxville. Nobody wants you, cadmium. Plus, cadmium red is ugly. Have you looked at cadmium red lately? Like, I went and looked at it because I got a tube for my gouache, just because I'm like, oh, well, I haven't had an actual cadmium for forever. Let's look at it. And I'm like, oh, this is horrible tomato red. God, I hate this color. There's no way I'm using it. The cadmium oranges or yellows are nice, but the red is ugly, in my opinion. It's just me. Even with yellows? With yellows, I just undercoat with white, Big Apple. With reds, yellows, oranges, if you want a fairly bright color, always undercoat with white. In other words, paint the area white first, and then put your yellow or your red or your orange over the top. Works a dream. You just never want to be painting that color over a darker color. I want this to be bright. The venom sac. Maybe we'll make it like it's kind of glowing, sparkly, orangey. Or I could depart from my color scheme and make it green, but with no other green on the model, I'm loath to do that. Green says poison, like no other color, but I did not paint any green on my wyverns, okay, so like what I'm just talking about, underpainting, that's what I'm doing here. I'm not using white, I'm using Osirian sand, but it's close enough. So underpainting this area will let me get a really bright orange over this. Whereas if I tried to put that orange over this dark red, it would not be nearly as bright. So whenever I want something like that to really stand out, like a detail like this venom sac, which is important, I usually, if the color scheme is generally darker, like this model, I will undercoat with a light color. And then I will put my orange or my yellow or my whatever over the top of it and get a much brighter effect. Yeah, it's ketchup. It's tomato ketchup. It's just bad. But the orange and yellows are pretty. Still not enough for me to really work. I worked with toxic paints because when I was in art school, that's what you had. And now that the chemistry has come along well enough to give us higher coverage non-cadmiums, I'd reach for the less toxic paint all the time. For sure. Okay, let's pop this out of frame so we can see. Remember to move the model so that you can get a comfortable brush position. Always, always, always. If your brush hand feels cramped, move. Move the mini around so that you can get at the area you want to get at in comfort. Otherwise, you are not building brush control. Your hand is tight, it's cramped. It's not getting any muscle memory out of what you're doing. You are essentially you're passing up a chance to improve. And it's the best kind of improvement. It's passive improvement, because as you paint things, your hand learns the brush stroke and you get more and more steady with it. And it's just a natural product of painting miniatures. But in order to take advantage of that muscle memory, you got to keep your hand in a comfortable and around the same position. If you're always contorting your hand and trying to get at the mini in all these different ways, you're not going to build that control. So that's why the mini is on a block, and I'm moving it all around so that I can always be painting and notice from roughly the same position, which is a comfortable one for my hand. And that is how I built the crazy brush control that I have today. All right, so we got our nice little poison sacs all outlined nicely. Yeah. Yeah, you can, I mean, if you're on my Patreon, Crows, you can just message me on there. Or if it's like, if it's interesting questions, you can always, ask here, and I'll tell you whether it's a good time to answer them while I'm working on Wyvern here. I mean, questions are never bad on this show. And if it's, it's a commemorative set, is it still available or not? I mean, I never know if some of the commemorative stuff is still available or if it's not. Like the Virtual Expo stuff some of it's available till it sells out, and some of it is not. So it's hard for me to know. Not still available. Yeah. What kind of question is it? Just like, I mean, the ReaperCon colors are always kind of one-offs. And sometimes we're on a theme and sometimes we're not. If you have a simple question, it's easy for me to answer it here, I guess is the point. And I also can help by telling other people, like, what color to look at if they don't have that color but they're interested in it. For example, Desert Sky is quite close to Cyan Blue. I think it's a little more pure. Too many questions. I just wanted a really deep, vibrant cyan blue. And I was trying to do a desert color because I wanted to do the cactus flower, the hot pink. So I had to think of other colors, and usually when I'm making a triad, I try to, like, they have something in common. So in this case, I wanted to put out 3 very saturated colors because I knew that the cactus flower was going to be such a hot pink. So cactus flower was my original intention for that triad, and then I came up with the snakebite leather and the desert sky. I also tend to like to make colors that are interesting together. So like the cyan, the desert sky and the cactus flower really go well together. You'll notice it's also a yellow, red, blue triad. If you look at them, snakebite is rattlesnake leather is technically a yellow. It's a very yellow brown. It's very saturated. It's actually a lot like rich leather. It's really close. Which is why the commemorative sets are nice because there's always a little bit of a difference, but in general, most of those colors are, they have other colors that are available that are close enough, one would say. I think aquamarine is really, although now with some of the Virtual Expo and Fast Palette stuff, we may even have equivalents for stuff like that. Yeah, but a lot of them are like I said, if you don't have Desert Sky, just reach for Cyan Blue. It's very close. You could probably get closer by adding a drop of Clear Blue to Cyan. But I mean, I use Cyan Blue all the time for a reason. It's a very good color. And like I said, rich leather is very close to rattlesnake leather. Cactus flower is very close to one of the Pathfinder. I think it's the Sun Orchid. And that's available. So you can get colors that are very close to those colors that are in production right now. They're not exactly the same, but there are colors that fulfill the same purpose. Which is why I say that knowing the exact color to duplicate a paint job isn't as important as knowing what kind of color it is. So, like, for me, if I didn't have Kraken ink, I'd know what was close enough. I'd be able to get something close enough. Because I know what kind of color Kraken ink is. It's a really dark purple without a lot of black in it that tends toward the blue side. So I know that I can look for a similarly like vibrant dark purple, and even if it's red, like monarch purple is, I can add blue to it to get it closer. But yeah, I think Thuvian sun orchid is really close to cactus flower. But yeah, see, I think these questions, like you asked about what inspired X color and all that, I think that's cool stuff to talk about on stream here. Like, you probably didn't know that I was trying to, like, you know, do a red, yellow, blue triad when I did that triad, or that I was trying to aim for a certain saturation level with all the colors because I like my triads to be consistent that way. But now you know. And now so does everybody else. And they wouldn't have known otherwise. Sometimes I don't have a direct inspiration for a color other than that I do not have a gray-green in the line and I really want to put one in. So since I have to make these new colors, let's look at what I could do that's on theme. Sometimes it's honestly that simple. It's just it's not really inspired by artistic fervor at all. It's simply I need a new color. What don't we have? It can be that simple. All right, so I wanted to put some dark line, that's dark walnut line, around that off-white that I used to bring that out. I'm now going to decide about all these spikes here. I bet I should do my purple. All right, let's do my purple. We were going to do that in the first place. So I've got 3 colors mixed up that are lighter than my original Kraken ink. One of them is just a little bit lighter, so I'm going to start with that one. Just kind of getting the edges of everything. And we'll just graduate up. And again, we're trying to figure out if we can make this work so that our purple doesn't just end with these scales here. And instead I can maybe fade it out a little bit down here. Make a smaller and smaller purple section. Like maybe I'll end it here. And then we can go to pure red for the rest of the tail. Or maybe here. We want enough visual interest. Like this is a long tail here. So the more visual interest we can provide up until we get to this very interesting barbed tip, you know, the better. So I guess I could take it all the way down here. Maybe to here. Here at the latest. Trying to get my little tiny strip of purple smaller and smaller. But yeah, sometimes paint line design is like inspired, and usually that's when you're first creating the line, when you are like really getting a concept for it and really figuring out its identity and swatching it all as it grows and making decisions about, you know, do I have a certain number of greens? Do I have a certain number of blues? Am I missing anything that people need to paint a good mini? You know, that's the creative part of paint line design and color design. After that, it's often, it's filling holes, or it's just, I need a new color. And I've got this theme, right? Sometimes it's like, well, we need Reapercon colors. The theme is pirates. Okay. I have to come up somehow with pirate-themed colors. Got it. And sometimes you'll have a concept for a color and you'll be like, well, I can give this a pirate name. I just have to figure out how I could, like, name it that way. And you just, you know, use a perfectly innocent color that wasn't pirate-related, but you give it a pirate name just so you can put it out. But as time goes on, more and more, you're looking more for color holes. You're looking for what haven't we done? Like, what color that's really useful have we just forgotten to put in? Because, you know, you're going to do stuff like that. Like the charcoal gray, the carbon gray. I'm just doing this on both sides, Julie, right now. So I've got the first side, like, mapped out where I want the purple to go down to, so now I'll go and do the other side. I was going to do all of this red, and then I realized that it looked funny with the purple ending right up here, so I decided to alter my plan. And then we'll go highlight. We don't really have, like, inks per se anymore. Like, white ink is a interesting beast these days. We'd probably have to get a super fine white pigment for that, and I kept trying to get super fine pigment samples, and without success for like 3 years. So I would say very, very little chance, but you never know. R&D is the part of the job that tends to drop through the cracks first when everybody is slammed. Even more than quality of life upgrades. Because in order to effectively do R&D, you know, developing like new products that work differently, like an airbrush line, that takes a lot of time. You have to research or request materials that you think might work, and then you have to mix up prototype batches and actually test them to see if they do work. So, like, when Reaper decides to do an airbrush line, you know, Ed might outsource some of that, or he might actually say, all right, this has to come out, so now we have to put time toward it. So Sadie will have to work it into her schedule, and production will have to adjust, and stuff like that, you know. A white ink, I've always felt that white inks are kind of weird. Like, I'm not sure why people use them. Why do you use white ink? Tell me why you use white ink. What would you use it for? Why is it better than a whitewash? What is it better at? Tell me that. Tell me usage. Give me usage. This is where you start with all paint concepts, is usage. What does this product have to do? And why can't we just do it with something we've already got? Why wouldn't you use pure white for edge highlighting? Highlights over primer with an airbrush. So essentially, it's a super strong white that looks, wait a minute, not as pigmented. So you feel it's not as pigmented. Interesting. So a lighter pigment white. We could do something like that. If you wanted a white that was in a more fluid, transparent base, that was harder, that would airbrush smoother, and that would not be as highly pigmented, Reaper does have the capacity to do that. At least I can think of a way that I would try to do it. If I had that as a, I need to do this kind of thing on my to-do list. But highlights over primer with an airbrush, a normal white does that just as well. Right, so there's products out there that you're using. I'm just curious, like, I just am really curious if, like, why... If it's not as pigmented, that makes sense to me, because all of our whites are very highly pigmented, and then that would definitely be something we don't have, right? But my question is always going to be, why can't I do this with just white paint? Because I am, after years in the painting hobby, what I often encountered when I was learning is that everybody was like, oh, you've got to have this, you've got to have that to get this effect. And I found often that after I'd spent the money, that wasn't true. So I'm pretty hard on myself about that as far as recommending a new product or coming up with an idea for a new product that that gets requested, I'm always like, well, is this really going to be different enough? Because I don't want to charge you guys money for something that, you know, you could just have thinned white. Yeah, that's the super fine pigment, probably. Chalkiness is usually over thinning. White tends to have a very heavy pigment, like literally, actually heavy. All right, let's get some highlights on the other side of the tail here. Let's see, make sure you guys are in focus. I guess I've never found it necessary to use white ink. I know I've heard that people like it. I never really got what was the point. So thank you for enlightening me. If it, with a white ink, it's almost certainly a super fine white pigment. It's probably not a, it's not an actual dye. I don't think they ever were. There we go. We got some purple, purple, purple. Yeah, that's likely white because of the base and that there's also no matting agent. That's the other thing, is that inks typically are glossier. Is it glossy? The base of the GW washes is slightly different. DJ tracks. Like, it's a really interesting base. So Reaper doesn't have that base. We do have a black wash, as somebody pointed out. But it's made to be, like, thinned to the point where you want it. So, like, you can add more brush-on sealer to it if you want it to be thinner. I made it pretty thick out of the bottle because some people wanted a really heavy wash, and it's much easier to tell people to just thin it more if they want it thinner than to tell them to add more black if they want it thicker. So our black wash would be the closest thing, but it's not as transparent as Null Oil is the short answer. There's a philosophy that I had when I was working at Reaper in the paint department and looking at products to develop. And I've talked about this briefly before, but yeah, you shouldn't, if you use brush-on sealer with washes, you won't have a wash break, for sure. But my philosophy was always, can we do this as well, or even higher quality? Can we do it for cheaper? Or can we bring it to distribution where it's otherwise hard to get, right? Because Reaper's talents have been that we put out high-quality miniatures at a very competitive or lower price point, and that we have really good distribution channels. So you can almost always get Reaper stuff somehow, right? And that's not always true if a small company is putting out a specialty paint, right? So, or a specialty model. It can be hard to find sometimes. So those were always my criteria. Those are kind of like the ethos of Reaper criteria that I had for pursuing new paint products. With Games Workshop product, it's like, can we do it better? Probably not. They have a custom base and their washes are very, very good. Can we do it cheaper? Maybe, but if it's not better, then would it sell? You know? Can we get it out there? Yeah, but GW is everywhere. We can't get it out there, like, more than they can. So, although if I had access to the chemical components to do that sort of thing, I think I probably would have gone for it, just because I know a lot of people just don't like, because I said we could do it cheaper, right? But, I'm pretty sure that's kind of a custom base. So, I never went for it. We could have gotten maybe close. I kind of played around with some tactics for it, but I was really wanting those super fine pigments to make it work, and I could, like I said, I could never get the samples I needed. Oh yeah, Games Workshop's like, I think, I don't know, because I am merely making an educated guess based on experimenting with the product and what I know of the chemistry. What I know of chemistry in general. But I believe that GW's contrast paints and washes are in a unique base. That GW can pay a paint company to create a base that otherwise they would not create. Because GW has lots and lots of money. They have, like, probably their own paint company that they work with, and they probably were like, we want it to do this. And they're like, really? Okay. Oh, good, Pirates. Awesome. Yeah. When the brush is actually not fighting you, it's a huge bonus, right? And then you start to really enjoy the hobby. Here, I'm out of focus a little bit, guys. Let me just because I'm up at an angle, let me refocus here. There we go. But yeah, that's what GW gets out of working, like, with paint companies sometimes, is they're able to... We work directly with the paint company too, but we don't have the millions of dollars to throw at a paint chemist to say, you're going to design custom bases for us. We want it to do exactly this. Yeah, the old coat d'arms was pretty good. I still have a couple bottles. I mean, every paint line is different, guys. When people ask me if I'll do X, when I used to work, in the paint department, when people ask me if I'd do this duplicate thing, though, of another company, I mean, I was always like, can we do it better, superior product, cheaper, with better distribution? Because otherwise, we're just competing with that company for the same market, and it's already established in that market. So if you can't make a significant improvement or offer it at a better price, or take advantage of the fact that that other company might have crappy distribution themselves by making it more widely available, then, you should be focusing on stuff you can do better, really stuff that you can do unique, better, cheaper, and get out there, focus. It's which battles you fight, right? You don't have infinite time, because you're always also working on all the stuff you already have all the irons you have in the fire, right? And this is true of, I think, any job on Earth. So when you do put your energy solidly behind something, like, there's definitely battles that are worth more to win. In my opinion. This is purely my opinion. I think Reaper is very good at choosing the battles it can win. When Ed figured out Bones, there was really nothing else like it, and so Reaper was able to put out, and with its iterations, it's gotten even higher quality. So Reaper is putting out a quality product that nobody else had done yet, for much cheaper, and we have great distribution. So, like, Bones is an excellent example of Reaper capitalizing on all of those criteria to make a product that now is widely popular, like, and popular all around the world, right? That gets us massive Kickstarters. And we've been able to put out models we could never have done in the old days. Yeah, Crows. I mean, and you should. You're a freelance miniature painter. Like, you're a free mini painter. You can choose everything. I mean, I always had a name for those. I was like, I'm a mercenary mini painter. I paint with whoever's paint I feel like, right? And you should, because some paint lines are different. So everybody's got something slightly different to offer, be it a different color or a different consistency or a different additive. I mean, experiment. I don't ask you guys to be like Reaper shills. Like, I'm glad when you say you love my paint. That makes me happy, because, I put a crap ton of effort into it over the years. Ooh, almost did the bleep there. Not that Ed doesn't say 50 things worse every Reaper Live, but I try to keep it family friendly. But yeah, so go out there, try everything. I mean, it makes me super happy that you like my paint as much as you do. It means that I did a good job and that I met my own goals for a quality product, right? But I mean, you guys watch me on my own stream on Thursday. I do the Scale 75 tube paint too. Been playing around with it a lot. There's definitely weaknesses to it, but it also does some things very well. So, good, Cass. Thank you. Yeah, right. So yeah, if you look at the philosophy that led to the creation of the Bones miniatures line, you can see all of the 3 factors that I outlined for you. So, and plus the unique factor, which if you can nail it, if you can nail something, if you can find that thing that the world really needs, but the world doesn't know it yet, or the world does know it yet, but they don't know how on earth you'd actually do it. Like for our hobby, it was definitely like cheaper quality miniatures, right? But how do you do that? Well, Ed figured out how to do it and then kept iterating on it to make it better. Like, that's what I love to see. That's why I say that, I often say that Scale 75 is like my second favorite paint company after Reaper, because if you look at their paint line, they are iterating. They are taking feedback. They're listening to the miniatures market on what it wants, and they're trying, right? They're trying to improve. And that's what Reaper does. And that's why these are good companies, is they're listening to you and they're trying to iterate on the product and make it even better. And that's gold. Like, that's a company that knows who its customer base is and knows that the happier their customer base is, the better they're going to do. Hello, Choice. But yeah, so it's like, can you do it better? Can you do it cheaper? Can you offer it to more people around the world through your distribution channels being superior? Or, and in addition to these, can you nail something unique that really improves the hobby? And Bones did all of that. And so that's why I tried to follow those principles in my paint line, and I didn't always decide just because this line over here had a great airbrush line and it was super hot and selling like crazy. You don't always just run after it. I mean, they talk about this in writing, actually. I always say writing reminds me of painting, and it reminds me very much of that. They're always like, don't chase trends. By the time you write the book that chases the trend will be over and a new trend will be here. That is absolutely true in business as well. You should instead find the special thing that you can do, that you can excel at, that your customer base loves. Like, that's it. That is the key. And if you don't hit it the first time, keep trying. So that's why I would be not as inclined to like chase market share and some other stuff that other companies do very, very well. I'm going to make these scales a little wider because when I look down the center, I see that I haven't gotten them to the same width as the other. But I do think that putting this purple line down the middle is working, so I'm going to keep it. Have I designed a mini with the help of a sculptor? Back when Reaper started Warlord, I created the characters for the Templars army, and I worked with Izzy to get the concept art done for them. And all those miniatures then became characters in the army, many of which are still in print. So, yes and no? That's probably the closest, because the concept artist was a necessary part of that. There have been minis I've asked for, as far as I've like asked for the idea, but I didn't help design them. Usually, I like seeing other people's takes on models. Yeah, the chibi stuff, it is fun. But yeah, I'm always tempted to take up sculpting more. I'm always tempted because I can always think of some things, like busts especially, that I would love to see actually exist. And that, everybody's got their own vision. Like, I would much rather see a sculptor tackle their own vision than try to dictate to them what I want. I think that when artists get to really do the things that they love, that's when you get a great model. And sometimes it's nice having that concept art in front of you, because you are just also trying to pay the bills. But when you've got a project that you're working on that you really love, like that it's just right in your wheelhouse, I think that's when you get a great miniature. Oh dear, we're almost done. I was actually on time today, so we have 8 minutes left. No stretches, I guess. I'll have to stretch after. You guys got me all into the down the bunny hole, and I like that bunny hole, so I didn't notice. But hey, we got awesome purple stripes, spiky bits painted on this wyvern's tail, which makes me happy. Now I'm just kind of putting those little highlights toward the outer edge to make it look more spiny, remember? I like spiny. I like the idea. I think wyverns are probably spiny things. Wyverns, the porcupines of the monster world. There we go. There. Now it goes naturally. It's a better lead in from this back section that did have separate scales. And it's a little bit off center down here, so I think I'm gonna actually bring this purple out just a little bit here. Looking at it from the top, the way that the torso curves, I want more purple on this side. So I'm gonna widen it over there. Just to make it more visually interesting and pleasing. Maybe on both sides, but I want it to be more centered, so even if it's slightly uneven. A dark green nomad, probably a 90-10. Maybe peacock. Maybe ancient oak. Any of those are valid. Just look for pictures of old bronze. I tend to like to go with a really dark green to start. But it can go all sorts of ways. David and I took some fun pictures when we were out at the down in San Francisco when his parents came to visit. We went to the Japanese gardens near the De Young Museum. And they had plaques, and I think they were bronze. And people had, here, let me see here. Let me see if I can find that picture for you since you asked about bronze. But whenever you're out in the world, pay attention to stuff like this, because you can get cool reference photos. Let me find our pictures from that trip. Oh, did I? No, it was June. All right, there we go, June. Where is my plaque picture? Aw, did I not save it? Oh, there it is. So, this is a bronze plaque that has been out in the weather and has had verdigris build up on it. But then people running their fingers over it have polished off the letters and the center down here. So people touching the bronze has given it a patina, and the verdigris stays around the areas of the sign. So isn't that cool? That just gives you an idea, because it goes to almost black, and taking pictures of this just gives you good color ideas also. You can see how it's got some darker green and some lighter green, and how it's built up, how it's got that beautiful reddish color if it's slightly tarnished, and then it comes up to really quite bright on the letters, but it stays a darker orangier color here. DJ, you can get a result like that if you mix, I just did it the other day actually, mix 9102, which is coppery orange if you have Master Series. Mix that with the color that I always tell everybody to use for highlighting metallics, 9100, which is pearl white. It's a white metallic. And if you do like a 2-to-1, it should give you that bright copper penny color. Like it's almost perfect. Like, and if you want it a little pinker, then use Dwarven Gold instead, 9451, I want to say. Maybe it's 49. I think it's 51. But both of those give a great coppery color, like right new penny color. But you got to add that pearl white to get it a little bit lighter, a little bit brighter. Not pure white, pearl white. So make sure you use the white metallic. Right. Everybody should work on that though. Like, you know, like I said earlier in the stream, actually, we've come full circle. Like working on correlating real world color to paint color. Even if it just means you, like, a lot of you guys separate your paints out by color, right? So you have all your browns together, you have all your reds together. You could go farther than that and put all your orangey browns together and all your yellowy browns and all your dark browns together. I tend to do that. And then when you're trying to find a color, look at it, say, what is this? Like, what is this brown? If you have a picture of it, put it into your Photoshop or your GIMP or whatever you're using, you know, and kind of, and use your eyedropper tool and look at what the swatch looks like. And then make an educated guess, like look at your colors and say, okay, what looks like it's close? Maybe look at the swatch you did on the bottle or the cap and say, is this really close to that? And chances are it'll be close enough. Like, trust your gut. Your gut will be able to look at that and make at least a decent assessment. Sometimes you have to kind of refine it. Once you've got it down, you're like, ooh, actually this needs to be more yellow. But you can do that. That's doable. You can say, oh, okay, well done. I just need to glaze with some yellow or mix some yellow in. And that will probably help. But don't be scared of color mixing. Just play. Play around with it. Pearl white. Everybody should own pearl white because it's the best color for highlighting almost every colored metallic. And a lot of gold. Obviously, it's the best color for highlighting most golds and silvers as well. So use pearl white if you want to build highlights for your metallics. That's what you use. That's why it's there. That is its purpose in life. All right, what do we do today? We are at the 11 mark. I'm going to try to be a good and on time. I started on time today. I'm going to start on time tomorrow if I have anything to say about it. So that means we'll be ending promptly at 11, which gives me more time to go to the grocery store. Yes! Win! What we did today, boy, we talked a lot about paint line, design colors, and design priorities, and we talked about highlighting metallics with pearl white, don't forget. And we we decided that we wanted to continue our purple coloration here. We made our color more solid on the red parts of the Wyvern and kind of committed to that so that we've got that color across the entire model, and we're ready to hit all of these red scales and highlight them up like we did up here. Probably next stream. Now that I've got that purple blocked in, I feel pretty good about it. So next time, let's dive into red scales. Ever plan to color? Rebecca, if you want to go and be like super freeform with your paint, you do it. Like, have fun. All that I ask you guys to do is have fun. Rawr, says Wyvern. Sorry, he was definitely asking you to, like, you know, do I have tooth rot back here? You know, there is Wyvern. He's looking pretty. Like, Wyvern is very, very pretty. Whoever imagined we'd have such a beautiful Wyvern, huh? So what do we have later today? Do we have, it's not Terrain Show, is it? What's our show later, Quindy? Ah, yeah, here we go. Beyond the Kit, right, Rhonda! She said she was going to do fun. She was doing fun stuff too. She was asking for people to give her feedback on her blog so that she could talk about it on Beyond the Kit. So definitely tune in later for Rhonda's show. And thank you all for tuning in here. Once again, I have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/paintingbig. Please check it out. I've even got free stuff on there. And then on Thursdays, I do a Twitch show, twitch.tv/paintingbig, over on my at my place, at my channel, at 4 p.m. USA Central Time also. So thanks, everybody. And thank you for the shout-outs there, Quindy. Awesome. And I will be back tomorrow. We're going to be working on finishing that half orc. She's really close. We'll probably do crystal staff and the other side of the bottle if I haven't finished it. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.